Well, welcome to our second meetup. The first one was such a great success. We had observant Matthew Pryor, who is here this evening. Matthew, thanks for being here. I've noticed a lot of familiar faces and a great lineup of people that have come along tonight. We're very lucky to have Michael Dean from AgFunder, and we look forward to hearing all about him and his journey to AgFunder and to the US, and of course how they've built a very well-known business in the AgTech and ag investment scene globally. Firstly, a big thank you to our sponsors, Crow Horwath and Findex, for having us this evening and putting on the drinks and nibbles and making the space available. I encourage you all just to take a brochure when you leave. There's a piece on SproutX, but there's also a new product that Crow Horwath put out. It's a fixed fee package for entrepreneurs and startups that offers them a full suite of financial services at a really great cost. So yeah, encourage you to take one of those. Of course, SproutX, some of you may have heard of. The first AgTech accelerator in Australia, and we can talk a little bit about that throughout the evening. And of course, the young agribusiness professionals from the VFF. So tonight, we'd love you to tweet, let everyone know that you're here, and any quotes and photos and great things that you hear. And we're hopefully going to get a tweet wall up here in a second. Some minor technical difficulty, but just use that hashtag AgTech Melbourne, and we'll get started. So. We'll just tweet wall. I know Andrew is on the way. So mate, thanks for being here. Thanks for the flight.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
This is working there.
Oh, it is. We'll just chuck there.
That on? Oh, that's it.
There you go.
That's it.
Excellent.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. It is a pleasure. Could you just tell us a little bit about, I suppose, you, where you've come from and your time in Sydney, etc., and then maybe take us all the way through to how AgFunder came to be?
Sure. I'm actually a recovering lawyer. I was working in Sydney for many years in M&A and planning and environmental law, and I wanted to do something a bit more entrepreneurial. I hadn't had an ag background at all. My grandfather had a dairy farm in Windsor, west of Sydney, years ago, but apart from that, nothing in my immediate family. But what I did have was a bit of experience in doing projects associated with the clean development mechanism under the Kyoto Protocol, so green projects. And I started travelling around Africa. I really wanted to do something with impact. Started travelling around Africa, talking to. I had a partner who was very well connected in West Africa, particularly. And so we were going to meet these agriculture ministers, environment ministers for all of these West African countries and African countries, and talking about doing these projects and cutting emissions and claiming carbon credits and all those sorts of things. And whilst they were bemused, I would say, a lot of them said, "Oh, that sounds interesting, but what we really need is agriculture. We really need to grow food here. We're importing food. We pay more than you pay in the West. We really need to do something about that." So we went away and had a look at what we could do. Found out that there's 500 million litres of palm oil imported into West Africa every year, and heart disease is the second largest killer behind infectious disease in West Africa, and the average life expectancy is around about 52 years of age. So we thought, well, why don't we import sunflower seeds, hybrid sunflower seeds, high yield sunflower seeds, build a factory, press sunflower oil, and get a healthier cooking alternative into the market. West Africans use a lot of oil in their cooking. So that was the plan, and we did pretty well. We raised $3 million, built a 2.5 million litre capacity factory. It was just a test factory, not a big factory, but big for West Africa. We had the official concession to over 40,000 hectares of agricultural land in West Africa, most of it in the Office de Niger, which is the irrigated area in Mali. And then in April 2012, the coup occurred in Mali. I had $15 million lined up from a private equity group in France and a family office in Chicago. The French sent their troops in. The coup occurred. The Islamists started marching south. French started bombing and everything else. The French private equity group pulled out. Then the family office pulled out about a week later, and we were left with no money, a factory, 32 staff, and we had the growing season upon us, and we needed to bring in more equipment. We needed to bring in seed, and so I was back on the road trying to raise money. failed dismally because of the socio-political issues in West Africa. It got to the point where we even looked at applying to the likes of AngelList, who had just started, and they were sort of big news in 2010. We applied to them; they would never borrow us, and we just sat down and thought, what can we do? How do we raise money for this ag deal? We know there's money out there. We know there's people that are interested in impact projects. We know there's people that are interested in agriculture, investing in agriculture. We had a profitable business, small but profitable, and we just decided that we're going to start our own. We'll do our own online fundraising platform, and that's how AgFunder started. And so Rob and I, my co-founder, Rob left a little bit earlier. He's a computer scientist, so he started building the back end. We started talking to potential investors, and basically from early 2013, we started building the platform. We got it built up. We started going to conferences, talking about what we were going to do. People all said we're stupid and it'll never work. And then in February 2014, we launched our first campaign. Since then, we've run 19 campaigns on the platform. 15 have closed, and the companies on the platform have raised around about $33 million. So it's been a wild ride. But part of the problem was that we were introducing capital for a fee. So that might sound like a problem, but when you're talking to deals that are talking to VCs, talking to angel investors, paying the fee bit sort of sticks in their craw a little bit. And so there was a misalignment of interests. And the feedback we were getting was that if there was a VC in the deal, or there was a well-organised angel, that they would actively encourage companies not to go into AgFunder, despite what we were able to do. So that's facilitated us to do a bit of a pivot. So we're pivoting now. We're just about to launch our first venture fund. We're going to raise $20 million for our first fund. And the idea is to invest in 20 to 30 early stage AgTech deals. We think that by doing that, aligning interests, we can utilise the distribution network that we've got. We've now got over 23,000 members on the platform. We've got 3,000 accredited investors, and those investors are scattered around 80 countries around the world. We get 60,000 hits on AgFunder News every month. And that was part of the strategy when we got started, was how do we get people to come to our platform? How do we get people to take notice of what we're doing? And we noticed TechCrunch. I don't know if you know TechCrunch, but it's a technology platform for information and news. And it's very successful in driving traffic through to Crunchbase, which is sort of the parent, which is more of a data analytics platform for investment in technology. So we started AgFunder News. We started writing reports just from basically talking to people at conferences and writing reports and publishing those, and then sending that to email to our members. And that turned out to be really, really successful. And after that, we poached Louisa from AgriInvestor.
We all enjoy hearing from every Friday morning later.
Yeah, right.
How many people here subscribe to AgFunder News? Yeah, the most.
Very good.
Very good.
Yeah. Well, it's a great place to go for your news, for AgFunder News. We're at the point now where people are coming to us with news and saying, we're about to announce this. Can we get onto AgFunder News? So that's been really, really successful. So the idea now is with the fund to be investing in 20 to 30 early stage deals, as I said, seed to Series A. We see that as a real gap in the funding market. A lot of the VCs are looking at later stage deals. Although we've seen a lot more accelerators launch, SproutX being one of them, which is fantastic because there's a real gap, particularly in Australia, I think, a real gap between that university level research and the commercialisation side. But so that's us. That's where we're at now.
Drank a few coffees on that plane, I reckon.
I did, yeah.
You did well. So you've mentioned AgFunder News, and I don't think we've talked about this before. So is AgFunder a media company, or is it an investment platform?
No, we're an investment platform.
Okay.
AgFunder News is a blog. That was always the intention, was to drive traffic through to the AgFunder News platform, the investment platform. The whole idea is to get investment into AgTech.
Excellent, that's right. Just because you and I had that conversation before, and of course you've created almost a bit of a Goliath with AgFunder News. It's taken off and it's massive, and I know that you guys are now obviously with your fund pivoting, and that's something I wanted to talk about. So just a bit of a rewind back into the AgFunder model. And a number of people here are starting up businesses and they're entrepreneurs themselves. Could you just take us through a fairly, I suppose, dot-pointed version or a snapshot of the pivots that you guys had to do along the way? Because I have no doubts that the model that you and Rob sat out and worked out on the back of a napkin, before, back was in 2012 or 13, is quite different to the AgFunder that we see today.
It's actually not that different. I mean, when we set out, we originally were going to have a fund. But when we got started, first-time fund managers, it's really hard to get limited partners who are going to invest, going to back you without having that sort of background of experience in what you're doing. We're still first-time managers, but we've seen a lot of deals. We are the voice of the industry, we think, on the AgTech side anyway. And when we started out, we never thought that we'd get to this size. What we thought we'd do would be to have pretty much a lifestyle business, essentially, where we'd just be funding half a dozen deals a year and taking a vacation, and that would be it. But I think as a result of what's happened, and much of that's been driven by AgFunder News, that's interest in the sector. After Climate Corp in 2013, Monsanto bought Climate Corp in 2013. Things have just gone through the roof, and thankfully we've been at the front of it. We've been there trying to help promote that and boost that.
And I want to now have a chat about some of the companies. Now, correct me on this statistic. You guys have knocked back about 99% of people that have applied. Yeah,
less than 2% we accept under the platform.
Correct. So, what are the most common traits, and what are the most common things that you see in these 98% of businesses that come through? That is one of the main reasons, or the most common reason, that they're not cracking through.
Quite often they're too early. So quite often you might have a great team, you might have great technology, but you don't have any traction. You need to have, so for investors to get excited about it, particularly organised angels and VCs, you need to be able to show you've got some sort of traction. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to have revenue, but what it does mean is that you've got to have users, and you've got to have this thing out on the farm. It's got to be past the proof of concept stage. You need to have farmers using the technology, and you need to have farmers talking about the technology in a very positive way. You're not expected to have all of the technology completely polished and finished. As you know, these things evolve over time as the technology rolls out and more users take on the tech. You find out things about the tech that you didn't before. But you need to have a fantastic team, and quite often that's not possible. You might have an interesting technology, but you've got the wrong CEO. You need to have a guy who can really push the boundaries and really get investors excited about the technology. If that's not happening, it's not going to fly.
So on that, and since SproutX was announced by Prime Minister Turnbull in December, and since then we've had a number of inquiries of mostly, I would say, businesses that have some sort of traction. My thing on the team piece, and I just wanted your thoughts on this, is that what are you seeing? Because what I see is a lot of farmers potentially, or a lot of people that come from a very scientific background, but when it comes to that entrepreneurial kind of commercial nous to deliver a value proposition to investors, is what I'm seeing. It's purely focused on, we've got the product, we've got this, and we've just got that's the return that we're going to give. But as you know, there's a lot more moving parts. Would that be right? Is that, from a team point of view, is that some of the things that you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. You need to have someone who's just focused on raising money. That's when you're a startup, money is your lifeblood. That's you're going to get through a lot of it, and that's the way things are. You need to have someone who can get that money in, who can convince investors, well, we've got the right team, we've got the right product, we're doing the right things, we're going about it the right way. Without that approach, investors just aren't going to get excited about it. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is.
And you've had a number of Australian projects come through over the last couple of years. Is there something that the Australian projects have or have not in relation to what you're seeing come through from other countries?
No, not really. I mean, the Australians that get to the US tend to be fairly well developed by the time they get there. Thinking of Paul Turner from AgDNA, speaks well, really understands his industry, understands the business, understands his model, which is really important. Being able to answer, sit down with a VC, and they can be pretty brutal, you know, and being able to counter that and to get their confidence is a really tough thing. So I think it's, you know, coming from Australia, I think we have a better connection with the land than most Americans do. So I tend to see the Australian companies that come over, I tend to see you know, a bit more polish, and you know, they tend to be more developed than they otherwise would be.
And is that due to the fact, and my colleagues would roll their eyes here tonight because I always bang on about this, an unsubsidised agricultural economy? Australia is second least in the world. I would say there's not a lot of froth in the AgTech market here. You know, if it doesn't create a commercial benefit on farm, it doesn't even get through the farm gate generally. No time for play. Was that something that you see a fair bit of in the US? I'd say there's a bit of froth over there potentially. Does that affect the startups that come through?
Absolutely. You know, you've seen
drones for an example.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of these technologies are coming out of universities and their research centres, and that's all great, but you've got to have people that understand the farmer's problems. You've got to understand what the farmer's going through, what their pain points are, how do we address those pain points? You know, are we doing it in a way that is going to be useful for the farmer? A lot of people think, oh, you know, if we do some spectral imaging from a drone, that's all the farmer wants. Well, it's not. It's just giving him information. It's not telling him how he can use this information. And that's the problem. There's so much information being captured out there. But giving effective analytics and effective prescription on how the farmer should be interpreting that and utilising that is a completely different matter.
Okay. And just a couple more from me, and I'll throw it to all you guys. We're competing with capital around the world, and I mean, you guys deal with this day in, day out. Could you talk about that a little bit for us, and what you're not seeing in the industry, and what you think we need to see as far as, you know, you mentioned earlier, we had a chat, you know, we've got great AgTech out there that's potentially creating great things on farm, but we're competing for the same money that may fund a cool pizza order app on your phone. And so what do we need to do, or what do you need to see in your startup that's going to generate something of enough interest to be a profitable vehicle?
Yeah, that's a bit of a bugbear of mine, is that, you know, we're developing all this great technology, but we've got people who have got no idea how to present it. You know, when you're talking about the broader investment markets, you need to be as sexy as these pizza delivery apps. You know, when we get the LA hipsters investing in AgTech, then we've won. You know, until then, we're just fighting. So we need to be you know, developing companies that not only have great AgTech, not only have great teams, but they also have a great website. They have a product that looks really, really good, a product that works really, really well, that is not going to leak the first time it rains. Just really ticking all of the boxes. You know, we're competing for the same dollar, so we really, really need to be focused on presenting ourselves in that way, being as slick, being as polished as the general tech is. That's vitally important, because I know that most investors, if they, for example, if they look at AgFunder, look at a profile on AgFunder, first thing they do is go to the company website, and if it looks like it's built in the year 2000, they'll just switch it off. They won't take it any further, regardless of how good the tech looks.
Okay, and just staying on the investment piece, your half-yearly report, AgFunder's half-yearly report came out, what, about a month ago now?
Yep.
And it reported a drop in investment into AgTech, but that was in line with a greater drop in VC investment globally. Is that right?
Yeah, so we saw a little under 1.8 billion first half of this year. That was a 22% drop on the same period last year, but in line with I think a universal 18% drop in tech investment. I mean, let's not, you know, beat around the bush. Investment in AgTech is still incredibly low. Investment in agriculture is very, very low. Traditionally, I think agriculture is what, $8 trillion industry, and we estimate that about 0.3% of portfolios hold an agricultural asset. 10% of global GDP, and a tiny percentage of the investment. So there's something wrong there. So we really need to start smartening ourselves up, really sort of promoting ourselves as a destination sector for investment, because unless we do, you know, the global secular trends that mean that we need to produce twice as much food by 2030, we're not going to get there without it. We need the technology.
And just on that, I mean, we love to whinge in Australian agriculture, and we always blame ourselves. I'd like to hear, I suppose, a little bit more around the thoughts on, I suppose, capital coming into Australia, and what the response has been from your conversations, obviously with your accent, walking around the places that you do overseas, where conversations have gone and whatnot.
There's not a lot of foreign capital that's looking in Australia from an AgTech perspective. That's the bottom line. They don't see it as a big enough market. So we've really got to rely on ourselves, or take that technology over to places like America and Europe and start getting it integrated there. That's how we can build it. There's not going to be money coming from elsewhere to here to fund our projects. We have to fund them ourselves. There's no question about that.
And just one more from me on an investment piece. A lot of people say that investors in Australia, I'm not quite sure, and I'd like to hear about how your fund's going, that investors in Australia are, I suppose, risk averse. And then I heard the very wise words of someone saying, risk averse, look at the amount of companies that set up and do minerals exploration, as an example, in Australia. Like, if you want to talk about, higher risk, it's not that the risk potentially isn't there, but it's perhaps the education piece, the awareness of AgTech and ag being a vehicle that can potentially deliver those returns. Obviously, mining's a lot more developed, but what would you comment around that?
Yeah, I think it's an education issue. There's, as you know, there's a lot of money going into these junior resources companies at exploration. We're seeing in Canada, for example, with the oil price crashing, a lot of people are pulling money out of the oil sands industry and putting it into agriculture. It's just an education process. It's going to happen. It's just going to take time. It's just education, taking time. We've got there's so many problems to fix in agriculture. Ag is the least digitised industry of all of them. There's so much potential and so much to fix. So, I'm very bullish about the sector. I think it's just an education issue. I think we're all early. Everyone in this room is early. We just need to keep going, keep doing what we're doing, and it's going to happen. It will happen.
Is that funny, or was it, Jesse?
Can I ask questions?
Sure, go for it.
No,
I'll try to be you guys and just move the mic around.
Thanks for coming, Michael. Question around, if you were to, you see a reasonable amount of deal flow, and if you could categorise, it might be robotics, sensors and hardware, software. I'm not sure exactly how you bring it down, but could you perhaps speak about the areas that are bordering on oversubscribed, if there is such a thing, and the ones that just aren't getting the traction and what they actually are?
Oversubscribed decision support, farm management platforms. There's too many of them out there. We're going to see a lot of, if anyone was looking at a farm management platform, I would discourage them to do that in the strongest possible terms. There's a lot of competition out there. We're seeing a lot of froth around controlled environment agriculture, indoor ag, but not a lot of investment in the sector. People are sitting back, they're waiting to see what's going to happen. There's a couple, freight farms and air farms and people like that who are getting the big money. But how are they going to scale these industries? How is it going to scale? Everyone's talking about local ag and eating locally. Having a business that does indoor ag and having the money to be able to build these things all over the place, it's just going to be, I just don't see how it's going to work. So I think that's going to be problematic. Cellular ag is another area, fake meat, alternative meats and alternative proteins. Gets a lot of press, but again, not a lot of money. So that would be the main ones, I would say, Jesse.
Matthew Pryor.
Hey, Michael, thanks. Great. Thanks very much for coming straight off the plane to here. I know the route. Interested, so like the whole point of having a funding platform is to develop a pipeline for downstream money and that kind of stuff. Forbes, I think today, had an article online about, is AgTech ready for consolidation? And I mean, you talked about there are a lot of categories that are overinvested. There's going to be, some of that 20% falling away. I think was a recognition of that. Certainly, maybe the mid-tier or the mid-growth investment people I've spoken to, there is definitely a sense that there's a lot of consolidation that's going to happen. Interested in your insights there.
Yeah, no question. I think it's just a matter of time. We need to see more money flow into the sector, right? But there's definitely going to be consolidation. We're already seeing it with the big guys. We're going from the big six to the big three, or we're about to. Thanks.
Michael, obviously you've seen the world, you've travelled it heavily, and you've experienced the ecosystems of each of the countries. So I'm aware that the USA and Israel are the leaders in AgTech, but I've always felt that there's a latent potential within Australia. There's a cultural and historical passion. Do you think that Australia and Victoria in particular has a chance on the international scene, and where do you see it developing?
Yeah, definitely. We're good at innovation. We have to be in Australia. I think we still need a lot of education for investors here, around AgTech. I'm not aware of many VCs that understand agriculture and certainly understand agriculture technology. There's not a strong angel sector here, certainly not on the AgTech side. We have a real problem with getting our research commercialised and out into the field. So there's that gap there. SproutX is the beginning of fixing that. I think that's going to make a material difference when you get companies that can come in, get a bunch of money, develop their business, understand, use the partnerships that Sam is putting together and you guys are putting together to get these technologies into the farms and tested by the farmers. I think it's going to be vitally important. But there's no question that Australia can be a leader in AgTech. There's no question at all. It's just getting the money into the sector. But we've also got some fundamental structural issues. We don't have connectivity. You need to have, the farmer needs to be able to gather the data to be able to use it. And if you don't have internet or Wi-Fi or anything else like that, even radio, you're not going to get that data. So you can't do anything with it. So what do? We need to get money invested into. I know we've got the satellite. When does that come online?
One's on.
Muster.
Yeah, Sky Muster. One's on, and they've got another one coming up in the next, I think, couple of months. So.
Right. Yeah. We need to make sure that's delivering broad enough data capability for these farmers across the country to be able to utilise these technologies. Digital technology without the ability to utilise it is pointless.
Hi Michael, I work for Adjacents, where we're doing virtual fencing for cattle. I think you met our CEO in San Fran. So I guess looking at the AgFunder website earlier today, I was getting a little bit worried without the conspicuous lack of livestock AgTech. Wondering if in a bit of a sinking ship. Not really, but what's but yeah, I guess I'm asking, what's your take on livestock within the AgTech into the future?
Yeah, I think it's a incredibly important sector. Obviously, it's just more the fact that we haven't had deals that we think we can bring on and we can help. There's been AgFunder is one of them that we've been speaking to you guys. There's a couple out of Europe that we've been speaking to as well, and we may bring them on in time. But we just haven't, because we haven't had the ability to deploy our own capital and be investing ourselves. We've been relying on what we think we can get. There's no point coming onto a public platform like AgFunder and having a failed campaign, because that doesn't do anyone any good. It can materially affect the company's ability to raise a Series A, for example, because they've had a failed campaign at seed, even if they get the money eventually from elsewhere. So we've always been very mindful, both from our own perspective and our own ability to keep moving forward and fund these companies, but been mindful of the impact that we have on the companies that we bring on. If we don't fund them, it can affect really badly.
Just as a follow-up to that, how much, like the commodity crops in the US, they do exert a disproportionate sort of perspective on where the money goes. I mean, it's a gajillion acres, but commodities have been down for it's getting close to 2 years now, and that's been probably part of that 20% too. Yeah. And yet, there are massive opportunities outside of it. Can you speak to that a bit? I mean, in terms of the broader wisdom of really, is it just chasing acres? Is that all people care about, or?
Yeah, I think from an investor perspective, and we take a different view on that. We think diversity across the entire value chain is important from an investment perspective, because when you're getting almost an index fund where you're really sort of ameliorating the risk that you're facing, particularly if you're talking different geographical areas. But from a VC or AgTech investment perspective in the US, what to focus on obviously is what are most of the farmers doing. Okay, so grain prices are low, grain commodity prices are low. If we can invest and help a farmer either save 10% in what they're doing or uplift 10% in their yields, that's what we're going to go for. And because it's such a big market, it tended to be the focus of most tech developers. They tend to sort of go to that market first. And that,
1%.
Yeah, I know. And that's the reality.
Just on the back of that, is that if you look at the exits, like the unicorns that have come out of agriculture, correct me if I'm wrong, they're generally your biochem being acquired by your Bayers, Monsanto, Syngentas, etc. Is that in a way educating those investors that perhaps that's where they need to be looking, and so they don't look at Agisons, not, but
Yeah, I think there's an element of that. It's hard to say because that's sort of been a previous situation, and when Climate Corp was acquired, that was the first digital AgTech unicorn. But I don't think we're going to see many more for a little while. I think we're going to see a period of consolidation on a smaller scale. We're going to see some of these big three. These guys are big lumbering businesses. They don't have the ability to develop this stuff in-house, so they need to inject that DNA into their business somehow. The only way they're going to do that is by acquiring them. AgTech's still a very, very early. I think last year the average age of an AgTech business was 3 years. So we're still very early in the cycle. We're going to see some unicorns in 3 to 5 years, but not before that, I don't think.
Michael, Andrew Dyken from Potato Magic.
G'day, Andrew.
We have some very disruptive technology that is around agricultural food usage. And we're up against a perception that the local market is, and they're coming back with comments like, we prefer a more conservative approach. I'll just put it into one sentence. We've created a liquid format of potato that melts when heated. We call it Chato. It will thicken water at room temperature, and you can make no end of products out of everything from milkshakes, etc., through ice cream, and whatever. And the hardest part around that is the perception. The company Potato Magic doesn't really help. But when you sit people down and actually try it, it's like, wow. But how do you get to the next step with something like that? When you're in a community that does have that perception that, that's just a little bit too way out there. I mean, it fits in a future food. Because the potato is 3 times more productive than grain. For the same hectare, it uses 30% less water. So it's part of our future with 9 billion people coming up and food security and all the rest of it. Plus the Chinese are now promoting potatoes over rice just because of that productivity factor. So how do we get there to get the finance to take that to market?
It sounds like a messaging issue to me. I mean, it's perception is, unfortunately, perception is your reality. So it's going to be about changing how people see it, getting it in front of people, getting them to taste it. I mean, it's really difficult. But I think going back to that point I said about being as slick and as well presented, there's some dodgy things out there that people are investing in. We must be able to do something with such a great product. So,
I've tried to get on the talk shows, but they're difficult.
What does your website look like? What does your website look like? What does your packaging look like? All of these things are going to be really, really important.
Yeah, we haven't focused on that with the website as yet.
Right. Yeah, I would say messaging for your because when you send something off to an investor, they might think it looks interesting, but when they go and see your website, if it looks like it's 1953, you're going to say these guys have, they've got something good, but they're not going to be able to drive it. And that's the whole point.
Yeah, I'm aware that I need a team behind me because in the past we've been an R&D company. We've seen several licensees go to the wall. Basically, supermarkets taking money under the table, etc. But it's all been media stuff of the past. So this time I've decided we have to do it ourselves. I'm very aware that I don't have the ability to do all of that. So I do.
How do you get the money to get the people to do that? That's the problem, Andrew. And that's the problem we have in Australia is we don't have that next step. And an accelerator like SproutX is bridging that gap, which is incredibly important.
Any other questions? Brilliant. In relation to the entire sort of ecosystem of AgTech, do you think we're missing
sort of new tech, or do you think we're missing sort of services for the existing technologies? Like you hear about a lot of, I call them like hype, you know, your aeroponics, all that sort of stuff. I'm not necessarily saying they are hypey.
Yeah.
That's what you hear about because it's like the futuristic stuff. So the question is like basically, is the market for, is there a bigger market for servicing the current industry, or do you think it's the future is in sort of coming up with new solutions to solve problems?
Well, I think both. I think there's enormous potential for both. You know, as I said before, there's just so many problems to fix in agriculture. There's so many gains that we can be making. You know, productivity gains, cost savings that can be made with digital technology and these new biotechnology. You know, soil health is something that no one has really looked at. We've looked at the biome around the plants, but this, you know, the soil biome and how does everything interact. There's a lot of work going on with that, and I think that's going to be an enormous area moving forward. The new CRISPR technology, you know, gene editing, I think is going to be massive and is really going to help farmers moving forward. So I think, you know, across the board in agriculture, there's great potential.
On that note, CRISPR, what's your perception of it across the industry? Like, I know that there's often a lot of misinformation about genetic changing, GMO, all that sort of stuff. CRISPR in particular, like I read a Nat Geo article recently, it seemed like it was getting pretty crucified there.
Yeah, interestingly, the US DA has come out and said, as far as they're concerned, CRISPR technology is not considered GMO because you're not introducing new species into an existing species. It's editing with either the existing species or taking something away. That's a massive boost for the CRISPR technology, and I think soon after that we saw I forgot the name of the company, but anyway they got $40 million investment shortly after that announcement. So I'm pretty bullish about it actually. I think it's great technology. We've got a company on the platform called AgGenetics, and they actually introduce white fur into Angus cattle. And because it's a Brahman gene, putting into an Angus cattle, it's not considered GMO genetic modification. It's the same species, they're just putting a different. So the idea is to have Angus cattle walking around in desert areas. So you know, I mean that could be a real game changer for nutrition in these emerging markets.
That's pretty cool. Last time I heard someone tried to do that, I was up in Rocky, and they'd actually cut the nuts off a Angus, and they sewed it onto the bottom of a Brahman bull. So you got the. I'm serious. It actually worked for a little while. I kid you not. And they've been trying
farming.
Yeah, no, it didn't. Yeah.
Franken-farming.
But after a while, the genetic makeup of the Brahman came through into the sperm, and it was all different.
Wow.
Anyway, these are the kinds of things you talk about at agricultural places. Moving on. I've just got a bit of a question, mate. You and I have been chatting about SproutX, and you know, Findex and the NFF have put a huge amount of effort into generating a place for entrepreneurs and startups in Australian agtech. What do you see? I mean, you know our model fairly well, and I'm not here to spruik SproutX, but what do you see, having seen a lot of other accelerators around the world that are working on agtech, what do you see some of the more macro challenges for us as we develop a fairly robust and we're hoping very commercially focused, solution-focused agtech community in Australia?
My biggest fear is the lack of deal flow. I think that's going to be a real challenge, is getting deal flow sufficient. You know, as I said, we take less than 2% of the deals that we see. We would take more, but for the problems that I spoke about earlier. But we anticipate that we won't be moving forward with the fund. So I think deal flow is going to be a real problem. I think, you know, the important...
Challenge, not a problem.
Challenge.
Thank you.
Challenge. Deal flow is going to be a challenge for you. I think, you know, when you get a technology that looks really, really interesting, there's inevitably going to be issues with the team. So finding the people to bring in and drop in into these deals is going to be a challenge as well, I think. I think just because of the size of the market that Australia is, you know, we just don't have that many people. And I think as more investment comes into the sector, and that's something we've seen in San Francisco and the US, as more money comes into the AgTech sector, we're starting to see, data scientists and people who have had no involvement in agriculture before starting to look at agriculture and starting to come up with solutions to problems that they're finding, and doing the research, finding out what problems are, and actually converting their skills into AgTech, focusing their skills on AgTech. That's going to be hard to do here, I think.
Thanks.
Thanks very much. I'm involved in agriculture in Kazakhstan, and we've been importing cattle there, and we've got an Angus stud, and we're involved in a lot of various areas. And I was just interested in the profile of the types of investors that you're seeing, and if you're seeing people coming from those more exotic places. We're seeing a lot of people coming from the oil and gas sector. They've made a lot of money in those sectors, and that's really cooling, obviously. They're investing very heavily into ag, and I'm talking people who have never had exposure to ag before, putting $50 million into a project. But I'm not seeing them take any interest in AgTech. And in my opinion, I think some of the projects I'm seeing them invest in are probably riskier than an AgTech investment would be. It looks beautiful on paper. They're all making IRR at 30% before they get in. But
reality's different.
But anyway, I was just interested, are you getting exposure from those developing markets and those traditional oil and resource markets?
So Canada, yes, definitely out of Canada. We're seeing investors that are turning their attention away from oil and gas and into AgTech. Canada obviously being a big ag country as well. We're seeing quite a few private equity groups that may hold ag land starting to look at AgTech as well, and sort of understanding that for their ag land portfolio, being ahead of what technologies is coming is going to be an important aspect for their business moving forward, or their portfolio moving forward. So portfolios that have not necessarily operating, but even just owning land that is being, for example, we had a sovereign wealth fund out of Malaysia invest because they own a lot of land, and it's just leased to farmers, and they want to introduce it, to help their farmers to be more productive. So we are starting to see more of that, but as far as the oil and gas side, mainly out of Canada from our perspective anyway.
Thanks, Michael. Peter Crock. I've got something out of left field for you. I'm here wearing two hats. One is an AgTech plant monitoring technology, but the other is medicinal cannabis. I'm heading up a startup here in Melbourne. We're about to have the regulations come through. I was interested in your thoughts on what is a completely new market here in Australia, and any comments around that, please.
Yeah, cannabis is very interesting. In America we've got this dichotomy where you've got 3, or I think soon to be 4 states, and we've got a vote in California coming up about recreational cannabis use, but it's still illegal federally. So we've seen sort of a dampening of investment because of that, because a lot of banks won't deal with cannabis producers, even those that have medicinal cannabis production licenses and all those sorts of things. We've seen restrictions on investing. So, for example, in Denver, in Colorado, you're not allowed to invest unless you live in Colorado, in a cannabis business in Colorado. So it's a bit of a dichotomy. We don't really know how that's all going to pan out. We haven't seen any big bucks. We've seen a lot of Snoop Dogg and people like that putting money in.
Must be a good thing then.
Vested interest, obviously. But as far as big investors, no, not a great deal. We've seen a couple of VCs, early stage VCs, that have dabbled and put some money in, but it's a tough market when the feds say it's a Class A drug. It's really tough to get across the line. I hope. I'm a big proponent of cannabis, medicinal cannabis. I think it's got enormous potential. I hope it goes well for you.
You probably want to vote it in and get on it. If they were to then vote Trump in, I would think. That was a minute's silence for a joke that just died.
I'm moving back if Trump gets.
Yeah, I am moving back. You're supposed to be moving over there at the end of the year, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right.
Good. Any other questions?
Michael.
Hello.
You've spoken about some of the technologies that you think are like decision support systems and that aren't the type of investments that you'd look at. What I'd like to know is your foresight. You've got this fund. What type of technologies, because you've seen a lot there, what do you think over the next 3 to 5 years are the ones that are going to have the growth and the demand and will be in your fund?
I like the spectral imaging, not so much the drone side and the hardware side, but the analytics and there's some really good stuff being done with lidar and radar and things like that at the moment. So I think that's really interesting. I like the biotech, CRISPR as well. I like that soil health is going to be a big area moving forward, I think. I really like robotics as well. There's some really interesting robotics going on. I think on the packaging side, the warehousing and packaging side, I think that's going to be really important for fruit growers. I don't think picking is going to be a sector for the robotics side. There's a lot of people working on that, but it's just, you just can't do it without bruising the fruit, unfortunately, as quickly as you need to. But on the packing side, I think that's going to be important. A lot of the growers in California are really hoping that the robotics companies get their act together, because they've got to pay overtime to the Mexican workers now. So it's unbelievable. But so biologicals, I think, are going to be good. Soil health, focus on the microbiome in the soil. I think companies that are developing technologies around that are going to be spectral imaging, robotics, certain sectors of the robotics sector. Well, there'll be plenty I'm missing, but they're the main ones that come to mind.
Hi, Michael. I'm John from Edenworth.
Hi, John.
Just interested in your take on the IoT spin and the real-world application to farmers' problems.
Well, it's, capturing data is one thing, but as I said before, it's delivering, usable prescription, which is the crucial thing. The only true sort of Internet of Things company that on the data side that I've seen is AgDNA, who are collecting data from the machinery, taking it up into the cloud, throwing an analytic program at it, and then delivering prescriptions to farmers. There's others that are working on it, but they're the ones that have done it best so far, as far as I can see. But Internet of Things obviously is coming. It's going to be widespread. I think Australia, we're way behind the 8 ball as far as the remoteness of our farms and our inability to move data around as effectively as the US is. But before long, I think the Internet of Things, everything's going to be connected. Sensors are getting cheaper. We're going to have disposable sensors soon. Jesse, we might have them already, I don't know. But it's not going to be long, and everything's going to be connected. That's another area, sensors as well, I think is going to be big.
We've just got time for a couple more questions. I just wanted to ask one. We've focused a lot on obviously a little bit on your journey and AgFunder and what you do and your ideas around the industry and what you've seen and learned. I just suppose for all the budding entrepreneurs out there, could you tell us a little bit more about, I suppose, your personal challenges as an entrepreneur? Obviously, you're I presume had your legal job obviously in Sydney. You're on a wage. You've obviously left that, and a lot of uncertainty. Political instability. If you're obviously a startup in Africa, could you just touch on one or two of the personal challenges that you've had to really work hard on dealing with as you grow as a person to take on the projects that you have?
Time management is massive. I've got 3 young daughters, so trying to run a startup and still be a dad is really, really tough, particularly when you're not earning a lot of money. We pay our staff market rates, but Rob and I pay ourselves way below that. When you go and talk to investors, that's what they want to see. They want to understand that you're taking a hit for the good of the company. Hopefully, when we get the fund up and things move forward, we'll be able to improve that. But the main challenges for me have been time management, spending as much time with my family as I possibly can, and making ends meet. We've bootstrapped ourselves, and it's tough. It's hard. You've got to go out. You've got to raise money. You've got to run the business, fly all over the world, perpetually exhausted. That's the life of a startup, unfortunately. Doesn't sound too good, does it? But it's very fulfilling, you know, when you build something that's yours and it starts to make some sort of progress. It's very, very fulfilling.
Excellent. Just time for one more question. Will from Rabobank.
Michael, I know you've been involved in Food Bites in the US, which is a pitching platform for startups. So I'm really interested in your advice. We've got a Food Bites coming up in Australia soon. For Australian startups who are thinking about pitching, what are the top 3 things that they should be thinking about?
Surprising question, Will.
Loaded.
Traction. We went through I don't know if anyone knows of the 500 Startups program. It's an accelerator in San Francisco. It's one of the top 2 in the world, apparently. Dave McClure is the lead at 500 Startups, and his mandate is, his mantra is traction. Whenever you're talking to investors, it's got to be a traction sandwich. Talk about the traction, talk about what your business is, and then talk about the traction. And that would be my advice, and that's what will be my advice for.
Excellent. Would you all put your hands together for Michael? Thanks again for coming along. And yeah, excellent. If I can just say, as I said, SproutX is also a sponsor of this, and just so you're all aware, we've got our pre-accelerator program open at the moment. Applications are open for the next 10 days. So if you've got an idea, or you don't have an idea, we're offering a 6-week free online course, world's best practice. We've got some really great mentors on board, and you'll be able to push yourself through that in 6 weeks and I suppose learn all that you need to around that lean startup methodology. So we'd welcome you all to jump on the SproutX website and apply. We'd love to see as many people on there as possible as we build the AgTech ecosystem in Australia. And yeah, feel free to have a few more drinks and nibbles and grab some brochures on your way out. We look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thank you.